Welcome back. October is Financial Planning Month, and it's a great reminder to check in on your financial goals, especially if you're nearing retirement. I'm joined today by financial advisor Brian Mirau, president of Mirau Capital Management. Brian, as always, it's good to see you.
Well, thanks, Nichole. It's always great to be here. Financial Planning Month gives people a chance to slow down and take stock of what they've built. A lot of people have spent their entire life savings and planning a real retirement. It begins when you start thinking about how to use what you saved. And that's where the strategy part comes in.
Well, let's start there. When you talk about financial planning, what does that really mean for retirees?
Well, that's a great question, Nichole. For retirees, financial planning is about creating a steady, predictable income, from all the hard work that you've done and all this money that you've saved up. And you do it in a way that minimizes taxes and risk. It's not just about investments. It's about coordinating everything like your income, your health care, your legacy goals, and even how your assets are titled. It's about putting the whole picture together so you can live confidently.
Well, for those getting close to retirement, where do you recommend they start?
Well, first of all, you want to start with clarity. You want to know what your monthly needs are, what it really costs to live, the lifestyle that you want to live. And then you want to make sure that you've identified your reliable sources of income that can cover those needs regardless of what's happening in the markets. And from there, we look at Social Security timing, we look at portfolio risk and how taxes could impact your income. And the goal is to remove as many of these surprises as possible.
Well, you work with a lot of people who have done very well financially. So does planning look different for them?
It absolutely does, Nichole. When you saved well, your focus shifts from accumulation to what we call preservation and decumulation. So we start looking at how to protect assets from unnecessary taxes and how to manage required distributions and how to structure accounts so that they pass smoothly to your families or to charities. And the strategies get more detailed, but the goal stays the same. You want to make sure your money lasts longer than you do.
And market volatility has been on everyone's mind lately. So how does that fit into all of this?
Well, volatility is part of investing, but it shouldn't dictate, your emotions or your decisions. We help clients design income plans that don't depend on what the market does week to week, and that way, when volatility hits, you can stay invested for growth while knowing that your lifestyle's still protected. And, it's all about having a good balance and perspective.
What about healthcare costs for many retirees that can feel like one of the biggest unknowns?
Well, you're right, Nichole. It's one of the biggest question marks in healthcare and long-term care. That can drain your retirement plan. And if you're not prepared, it can create a lot of problems. And, what we do is we help clients look at Medicare options, create income earmarked for future care, and explore coverage that helps protect your assets. And, you can't predict the cost of health care, but you can plan for the impact.
Well, this really highlights why Financial Planning Month matters. So how can your team help people take that next step?
Well, Nichole, this is a perfect time to sit down and review your plan. My team and I help people look at the whole picture from your income to your taxes to your health care, your investments, and your legacy planning, and to make sure that everything's aligned. And, it's about helping people protect what they've built on so that they can focus on being retired. We provide a retirement toolkit along with an in-depth retirement analysis that will help you focus on taxes, risk balance, inflation, and income sources and income streams. And that's going to help answer that number one question of, do you have enough to retire?
Well, if you'd like to make sure your retirement plan is built for the road ahead, now's the time to take action. You can call 915-233-2904. You can also visit their website. Brian, thanks so much for your time today.
Nichole, thanks for having me today.
We'll be right back.